From stage to hospital bed. Why Jin's health issues shook Jungkook to his very core. There is nothing more shocking to the public and global fans than hearing the news that Jin, one of the most iconic members of BTS, suddenly had to be rushed to the hospital after completing his solo tour series. A big question immediately arose. How could an artist with extraordinary stamina on stage, who had just amazed thousands of fans with an energetic performance, now lie in a hospital bed in a startling condition? Even more surprising, Jin's condition was said to have shaken Jungkook emotionally to his very core, making many people wonder how serious the impact of this health problem was on BTS's internal dynamics. The news of Jin falling ill after his solo tour came suddenly, almost without warning. On stage, Jin appeared in prime condition. A stable voice, confident gestures, and warm interaction with the audience filling the arena. There were no signs that his body was bearing a heavy burden. However, only a few hours after the final concert, medical reports stated that there was acute exhaustion that required Jin to undergo intensive care. This situation created a wave of panic among fans, especially since Jin's health record had been relatively stable. The fact that this incident occurred right after the euphoria of the tour's success made it even more dramatic and full of speculation. Jungkook's reaction became the biggest spotlight after this incident. As the youngest member who has a deep emotional bond with Jin, Jungkook's shock could not be hidden. Close sources revealed that Jungkook felt devastated, even to the point of questioning the health management applied during the tour series. On several occasions, Jungkook has been known as someone who greatly pays attention to the members' well-being, so seeing Jin lying weak in the hospital truly shook him. Jungkook's emotional reaction became a reflection of how fragile the relationship is between the glittering world of the stage and the bitter reality of health that can collapse at any time. Many music industry analysts assess that this case was a strong warning for all parties involved in global artist management. The demand to perform perfectly on stage often clashes with the physical limits of the human body. Jin may have pushed himself to the point of exhaustion that could no longer be covered by smiles and cheers on stage. Jungkook, who directly witnessed how his senior had to face health consequences, was said to feel emotional trauma that was not small. In several internal comments, Jungkook was even considered to have lost focus temporarily due to the mental burden of this incident. Fans' shock was further aggravated by the lack of official information provided at the beginning when this case emerged. The agency only issued a brief statement saying that Jin was experiencing fatigue and needed full rest. However, for the public, the term fatigue sounded too simplistic to describe a world superstar who suddenly collapsed after a tour. Wild speculation then arose. Was there a serious medical condition deliberately covered up? Was the tour schedule too tight to the point of endangering the artist's health? These questions echoed on social media, creating an atmosphere full of worry as well as suspicion. Jungkook, in his position as a witness as well as part of the big BTS family, was considered a reflection of fans' anxiety. His obvious emotional change, from usually expressive to more quiet and full of reflection, illustrated how deep the wound he felt was. The relationship between Jin and Jungkook was not merely co-workers on stage, but a brotherhood bond formed from years of struggle together. When one falls, the other feels the same burden, and this is what made the news of Jin's illness feel far more shocking for Jungkook. In a broader context, this case opened a serious discussion about the mental and physical health of K-pop idols. The perfect performance demanded every night often hides suffering that is not visible. Jungkook being shaken was not only because he was worried about Jin's health, but also because he realized how vulnerable the human body is behind the glitter of the spotlight. This awareness then raised a big question in his mind. To what extent should the industry push artists for public satisfaction, and to what extent may safety limits be crossed? Fans around the world showed extraordinary solidarity toward Jin, with various prayer campaigns and support on social media. However, behind that wave of sympathy, there was also anger directed at management. Many assessed that the solo tour schedule was too tight, without providing enough recovery space. Jungkook, who has long been known as vocal in voicing his opinions, was said to have hinted that artists' health must be made an absolute priority. That statement, though not delivered officially, was enough to show how seriously he took Jin's condition and the end. From the grand stage filled with the cheers of thousands of spectators to the silent hospital bed, Jin's story became a harsh reminder that the glitter of the entertainment world is always overshadowed by real risks. Jungkook being shaken to his emotional core was a symbol of how strong yet fragile human bonds are behind the global phenomenon called BTS. This incident was not merely the news of a star falling ill, but also a reflection of how industry pressure can topple even someone as strong as Jin, and how its impact can leave deep scars on those closest to him. The news of Jin falling ill after his solo tour truly shook many parties, especially because its impact was directly linked to Jungkook's emotional condition. However, behind the emotional drama and the wide public spotlight, a question that cannot be avoided arises. Does all this information truly reflect reality, or is it part of a narrative deliberately constructed to create a wave of attention? Such questions are important, for the international entertainment world often involves a complex play of public opinion. Is it reasonable that an artist with such strict health standards could suddenly fall ill without any prior signs? Or conversely, was this sudden illness story deliberately arranged as a dramatic narrative to keep public attention focused on the artist? This is where skepticism becomes very important. The information we consume today no longer purely comes from one official channel, but is scattered across various platforms such as TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, and other online media that often prioritize viral speed over factual accuracy. When the public hears that Jungkook was shaken to his very core, do we have concrete evidence about such emotional intensity? Or are we merely accepting interpretations from video clips, fans' comments, or even speculations exaggerated by the media? Could it be that Jungkook's sadness was deliberately projected as a narrative to create a dramatic brotherhood story that could bind fans' emotions more deeply? This is where the dilemma of information that we must be aware of lies. Skepticism does not mean rejecting all information, but rather placing ourselves to always ask, who is delivering it, from what source, and for what purpose was this narrative built? If this news is true, then it is natural that we show sympathy. However, if it turns out there are commercial motives, promotion, or merely an effort to maintain an artist's relevance in a very competitive industry, are we ready to admit that we are part of the grand game called media sensationalism? Let us consider another possibility. Could the narrative of Jin's illness after the tour actually be categorized as industry storytelling, deliberately polished to look dramatic? Is it not already an open secret that global entertainment agencies often craft their artists' storylines in such a way to maintain public attention? If that is true, is Jungkook himself aware that his emotions are being displayed and capitalized as part of BTS's grand narrative? Or is he merely trapped in a whirl of spotlight that can no longer be controlled? Then how about the public's reaction? Do fans truly care about Jin's health condition? Or are they more concerned with the emotional sensation that they can repost on social media? The phenomenon of trending on Twitter, reaction content on YouTube, to video clips on TikTok proves that every big news today is not only about facts, but also about how it is consumed, twisted, and reproduced in the form of digital content. Thus, the question is, are we still able to distinguish between actual reality and a narrative construction already manipulated by the media? The agency's official statement also cannot immediately be regarded as absolute truth. Words such as fatigue or need full rest sounded too generic for a case this big. Were those terms deliberately used to calm public panic while hiding more serious facts? Or conversely, was this incident actually not too significant, but exaggerated to create mass sympathy? These questions are important to be asked because the public has the right to know the reality behind the narrative. Let us also reflect on our role as readers. Thank you.